The Ritz-Carlton, champagne service, strawberries, room 1847. Maggie found the receipt in her husband's pocket, charged to their joint account, on their anniversary. But here's what Derek didn't know. He didn't know that when he handed her the divorce papers with that smug smile on his face, when he told her she was nothing, no family, no money, no leverage, when his mother told her to take $50,000 and disappear gracefully, he didn't know that the quiet wife he had dismissed for 10 years, the woman he had cheated on, stolen from, made to feel invisible, was the daughter of the richest man on the planet, and her father had just bought his entire company. Every share, every asset, every piece of the Whitmore legacy that Derek was so proud of, gone, in a single transaction. When Derek walked into that boardroom expecting to meet his new boss, he found his wife sitting at the head of the table, the same wife he told to get out in 60 days, the same wife who supposedly had nothing. And when the truth finally hit him, when he realized who she really was, this man who had never kneeled for anyone in his life dropped to his knees in front of everyone and begged. But by then, it was far too late. The lesson. This story carries a powerful message for anyone who has ever been made to feel small, who has ever been told they are not enough, who has stayed too long with someone who didn't deserve them. Your worth is not determined by how others treat you. The people who dismiss you today may be the same people who need you tomorrow, and sometimes. The greatest revenge is simply becoming the person you were always meant to be. Never let anyone convince you that you are nothing, because you never know what hidden strength, what secret power, what unexpected inheritance is waiting for you to claim it. The Ritz-Carlton. Champagne service, strawberries, room 1847, charged to joint account. Maggie Callahan read the crumpled receipt for the third time. The dryer hummed behind her. The smell of lavender fabric softener filled the laundry room. Such ordinary things, such an ordinary Tuesday evening, and yet her hands would not stop shaking. She had found it in the pocket of Derek's gray suit, the one he wore to the Henderson merger meeting last Thursday, the meeting that ran late, the meeting that kept him out until midnight. The receipt was dated 3 days ago, their anniversary. Maggie pressed her back against the washing machine. The metal was cold through her thin cotton shirt. She could hear Derek upstairs, the shower running, him whistling, actually whistling, like a man without a care in the world. She looked at the receipt again. Strawberries. Derek hated strawberries. He had complained about them at their own wedding, said they gave him hives, said they were a waste of money on a dessert table, but someone liked strawberries. Someone in room 1847. Maggie pulled out her phone. Her thumb hovered over the screen. She could check his location history. She had the password. She had always had the password because she had never needed to use it. 10 years of marriage, 10 years of trust, 10 years of believing the late nights and the business trips and the distracted dinners. She opened the app, closed it, opened it again, closed it. Her chest felt tight, like someone had wrapped a belt around her ribs and was slowly pulling it tighter. She already knew, deep down in the place where wives always know. She just needed to stop knowing. The shower turned off upstairs. The whistling stopped. Maggie folded the receipt carefully. She placed it in her pocket. She walked to the kitchen and began preparing dinner. Salmon, asparagus, wild rice, Derek's favorites, the meal of a good wife. The meal of a woman who had not just found evidence of her husband's affair. Her hands moved automatically. Seasoning, preheating, arranging. She had done this 1,000 times. She could do it with her eyes closed. She could do it with her heart breaking. The stairs creaked. Derek appeared in the kitchen doorway. His dark hair was still damp. He wore the cashmere sweater she had bought him for Christmas. He looked handsome. He always looked handsome. That was part of the problem. He said nothing, just walked to the refrigerator and pulled out a beer. Maggie watched him, waiting, wondering if he would mention their anniversary, wondering if he would apologize for missing dinner that night, wondering if he would lie. He twisted off the cap and took a long drink. Then he leaned against the counter and scrolled through his phone, smiling at something on the screen. The belt around her ribs tightened another notch. Maggie turned off the stove. She reached into her pocket. She placed the receipt on the marble counter between them. Derek did not look up from his phone. She said his name. Quiet, steady. The voice of a woman holding herself together with nothing but willpower. He glanced at the receipt. His expression did not change. You went through my pockets. It was not a question. It was an accusation. You charged your affair to our joint account. He set down his phone, finally meeting her eyes, and what she saw there was worse than guilt, worse than shame. What she saw was annoyance. Maggie. He sighed the way he always did, like she was a chore, like her feelings were an inconvenience. Don't be dramatic. Who is she? Does it matter? He picked up his beer, again, casual, unbothered. You and I both know this marriage has been over for years. The words hit her like a physical blow. She gripped the edge of the counter. The granite was cold and hard beneath her fingers. Over. The word tasted like ash in her mouth. You've been sleeping with another woman on our anniversary, and you think I'm the one being dramatic. Derek shrugged. I've been waiting for you to figure it out. Honestly, Maggie, I thought you'd be relieved. This way I don't have to be the bad guy. The bad guy. She almost laughed. Almost. You don't have to be the bad guy. You're already having an affair. I want a divorce. The kitchen went silent. Even the hum of the refrigerator seemed to fade. Just those 4 words hanging in the air between them. 4 words that erased 10 years. 4 words that erased everything she thought she knew. Derek reached into the drawer beside him, the one where they kept takeout menus and batteries and old receipts. He pulled out a manila envelope. Thick, official-looking. He had hidden it there, in their kitchen, in their home, waiting for this moment. I've already had the papers drawn up. He slid the envelope across the counter toward her. My lawyer says it should be pretty straightforward. We have a prenup. You signed it. Maggie stared at the envelope. She remembered signing that document. She had been 22 years old. Stupid with love. Derek's family had insisted on it. His mother, Carolyn, had called it a formality. His father, Preston, had called it standard practice. And Maggie had signed it because she believed they would be together forever. She opened the envelope. The papers inside were dense with legal language. She saw her name, his name, words like assets and division and waiver. The prenup was attached, highlighted in yellow, the relevant sections, according to this agreement. Derek's voice was almost cheerful now. You get nothing. The house is in my family's name. The cars are mine. The investments are mine. You can keep your clothes. Maybe the dog, although technically Winston is mine too. The dog. He was fighting her for the dog. You have 60 days to find somewhere else to live. Derek finished his beer, set the bottle on the counter with a decisive clink. I think that's more than fair. Don't you? Maggie did not answer. She was staring at the prenup, at her signature from a decade ago. The handwriting of a girl who had believed in fairy tales. The handwriting of a woman who no longer existed. Derek walked past her. He paused at the doorway. Oh. And Maggie, don't make this difficult. You have nothing. No family, no money, no leverage. Just sign the papers and move on with your life. It's the dignified thing to do. He left. She heard his footsteps on the stairs, heard the bedroom door close, heard the television turn on. A basketball game. The Celtics, his favorite team. Maggie stood alone in the kitchen. The salmon sat untouched on the stove. The asparagus had gone cold. The wild rice had stuck to the bottom of the pot. She picked up her phone. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely type. But she managed. 3 words. To the only person she trusted. I need you. Gwen's response came in seconds. On my way. Maggie slid down the kitchen cabinets until she was sitting on the floor. The tile was cold beneath her. The refrigerator hummed. The clock on the wall ticked. The sounds of her life falling apart had a rhythm, steady and relentless, and completely indifferent to her pain. She pulled the receipt from her pocket again. The Ritz-Carlton, champagne service, strawberries, room 1847. But the receipt was not the worst thing she would find that night. Gwen arrived at 11:47. Maggie knew the exact time because she had been staring at the clock for 2 hours, counting the minutes, waiting. The doorbell rang. Maggie opened it to find her best friend standing on the porch. Hair in a messy bun, wearing sweatpants and a law school hoodie from 15 years ago, carrying a bottle of wine and a legal pad. Gwen Reardon had been Maggie's best friend since their freshman year at Boston College. They had been roommates for 4 years, bridesmaids at each other's weddings. Gwen's marriage had ended after 3 years when she caught her husband with a neighbor. She had survived, thrived even. Now she was a paralegal at one of the best family law firms in the city. She took one look at Maggie's face. Then she stepped inside and wrapped her arms around her. Maggie did not cry. She had not cried yet. The tears were there. She could feel them, pressing against the backs of her eyes, like water against a dam. But the dam was holding, for now. They went to the bathroom, the only room with a lock. Gwen sat on the edge of the tub. Maggie sat on the floor, with her back against the door, like they were teenagers hiding from parents, like they were girls again. Before marriages, before betrayals, before everything went wrong. Tell me, Gwen said, so Maggie told her. The receipt, the confrontation, Derek's complete lack of remorse, the divorce papers, the prenup, the 60 days. Gwen listened without interrupting. Her face grew darker with each detail. When Maggie finished, she reached for the wine bottle, twisted off the cap, handed it to Maggie. Drink. Maggie took a long swallow. The wine was cheap and sweet, Gwen's favorite. It tasted like college, like simpler times. That bastard. Gwen's voice was quiet but fierce. That absolute bastard. He said I should be relieved. Maggie heard the words come out of her mouth, flat, disconnected, like she was telling someone else's story. He said the marriage has been over for years. Has it been? Maggie considered the question. Had it been over? Had she known? Had she been pretending along with him? I don't know, she said finally. Maybe I just didn't want to see it. Gwen nodded slowly. Where are the papers? In the kitchen. Get them. Maggie obeyed. She walked past the living room where Derek was still watching the game. He did not look up. She grabbed the envelope from the counter, brought it back to the bathroom, locked the door behind her. Gwen spread the documents across the bathroom floor. The divorce petition, the asset division, the prenup. She read them carefully, slowly, her paralegal brain analyzing every word. Maggie watched her friend's face, looking for hope, looking for anything. 10 minutes passed. 15. The basketball game ended in the other room. She heard Derek moving around, then silence. He had gone to bed. Their bed. The bed she would never sleep in again. Gwen looked up. Her expression had changed. Something new in her eyes. Something that looked almost like triumph. Maggie, she said slowly, did you actually read this prenup? The whole thing? No. I signed it 10 years ago. I never looked at it again. Gwen held up the document. She pointed to a section near the back. Page 37. A paragraph highlighted in yellow. But not the paragraph Derek's lawyer had wanted them to see. A different one, just above it. Read this. Maggie took the prenup. She squinted at the small print. Legal language. Dense and complicated. But one phrase jumped out at her. In the event of proven infidelity by either party, she read aloud, "This agreement shall be rendered null and void." She read it again, then a third time. The words did not change. The infidelity clause. Gwen was grinning now. It's standard in high-end prenups. Rich families include it to protect their precious sons from gold diggers. But it works both ways. I don't understand. Maggie, Derek committed adultery. You have proof, hotel receipts, credit card statements, probably more if we dig. The prenup he's so proud of, the one that was supposed to leave you with nothing. It's void. The dam broke. Maggie started crying, really crying. The kind of crying that shakes your whole body, that makes no sound because there is no air left in your lungs. Gwen held her, let her cry, said nothing, just held her. When the tears finally slowed, Maggie looked at her friend, red-eyed, exhausted, but something else too, something that felt like the first tiny spark of hope. What do I do? Gwen picked up her legal pad, started writing. First, we document everything, every receipt, every credit card statement, every suspicious late night. Then we get you a real lawyer, someone who will destroy him. She paused, looked at Maggie with the fierce, protective love of a sister. He thought you had nothing, no family, no money, no leverage, but he forgot one thing. What? You have me, and I have been waiting 10 years to watch that man get exactly what he deserves. The morning light came too early, gray and cold through the bathroom window. Maggie had fallen asleep on the floor. Her neck ached. Her eyes were swollen. Her mouth tasted like cheap wine and heartbreak. Gwen was gone. A note on the counter said she had left at 5 to get ready for work. She had taken pictures of all the documents. She would call with a lawyer recommendation by noon. Maggie stood slowly. Her body felt like it belonged to someone else, heavy and disconnected. She looked in the mirror. The woman staring back was a stranger, pale, red-eyed, lost. She showered, dressed, went downstairs. Derek was already gone. The coffee pot was empty. He had made enough for himself and left nothing for her. A small cruelty. One of thousands she had stopped noticing over the years. Her phone buzzed. A text from Derek. I assume you'll be out when I get home. Take whatever you need. Maggie stared at the message. So casual. So dismissive. Like she was a tenant being evicted, not a wife of 10 years. She did not respond. Instead, she went to his office. The room he kept locked, the room she never entered, the room where he worked late into the night while she slept alone. The door was unlocked now. He must have forgotten. Or maybe he no longer cared. She pushed it open slowly. Inside, she found the usual: desk, computer, filing cabinets, Whitmore family photos on the wall, Derek shaking hands with senators, Derek at charity galas, Derek receiving awards, the carefully curated image of a successful man. She sat at his desk. She opened his laptop. She typed his password, their anniversary date. He had never changed it. The irony burned. She started searching. Emails, bank statements, files and folders she had never seen. The digital footprint of a marriage she thought she knew. What she found made the affair look almost innocent. Hidden accounts, 3 of them, in the Cayman Islands, in Switzerland, in Singapore. Accounts Derek had opened without her knowledge. Accounts containing over $700,000. Money that should have been theirs. Money he had been moving for months. Maggie printed everything, page after page, evidence of systematic theft. He hadn't just cheated on her, he had been robbing her, planning his exit for at least a year, maybe longer. The phone rang. "Gwen, I found a lawyer," she said. "Rachel Morrison, the best in the city. She can see you at 2. Good." Maggie's voice was steady now. "Tell her I have some additional documents to show her." "What kind of documents?" "The kind that prove my husband has been hiding over $700,000 in offshore accounts." Silence on the other end. Then a low whistle. "That stupid bastard," Gwen said. "He really thought you would just sign and walk away. He thought I was nobody. What changed?" Maggie looked at the printed bank statements, at the evidence of Derek's betrayal, at the life she had wasted on a man who had never deserved her. "I stopped believing him." The law office of Rachel Morrison occupied the top floor of a glass tower downtown. The waiting room had fresh flowers and expensive art. The receptionist offered sparkling water and genuine sympathy. Rachel Morrison herself was not what Maggie expected. Mid-50s, silver hair cut short, reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She looked like someone's grandmother, but her eyes were sharp, calculating. The eyes of a woman who had destroyed countless cheating husbands. She reviewed the documents for 45 minutes. The prenup, the bank statements, the credit card receipts, the photographs Gwen had printed from Derek's email. A woman named Sloane Mercer, 29 years old, an employee at Whitmore and Associates. Derek's coworker, his subordinate. When Rachel finally looked up, her smile was cold and satisfied. "Mrs. Callahan," she said, "your husband has made several significant legal errors, such as the prenup is void due to the infidelity clause. The offshore accounts constitute hidden marital assets, and this affair with an employee opens him up to workplace harassment, claims that could destroy his career." She removed her glasses, folded her hands on the desk. "In short, he is going to give you everything you deserve, and I am going to enjoy making him do it." Maggie should have felt triumphant. Instead, she just felt tired. "I don't want revenge," she said. "I just want out." Rachel nodded. "I understand, but sometimes getting out requires leverage. And right now, Mrs. Callahan, you have all the leverage in the world." That evening, Maggie met with Carolyn Whitmore. Derek's mother had requested a chat at the country club, the same country club that had denied Maggie membership 3 times, the same country club where Carolyn had spent a decade looking down on her. The main dining room smelled of old money and fresh flowers, crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, waiters who moved like ghosts. Carolyn sat at a corner table, martini in hand, Chanel suit, pearls at her throat, 64 years old and still beautiful in the way that only expensive maintenance can achieve. Maggie sat across from her, ordered nothing. "Well," Carolyn said, "you certainly took your time. I wasn't aware there was a schedule. Derek told me about your little discovery." Carolyn's voice was perfectly controlled, sympathetic and condescending in equal measure. "I want you to know I'm terribly sorry. Are you?" "Of course." Carolyn sipped her martini. "I told Derek not to marry you. You were never one of us. Too common. But you made my son happy." "For a while, he made himself happy," Maggie said. I just stood there. Carolyn's eyebrow rose slightly, the closest she ever came to showing surprise. "Interesting. Self-awareness at last? Is there a point to this, Carolyn?" The older woman set down her glass. Her facade cracked just slightly. Beneath the polish, there was something harder, something desperate. "Sign the papers. Take the 50,000. Disappear gracefully. It's the only power you have left." Maggie looked at her mother-in-law. This woman who had criticized her cooking and her clothes and her education for 10 years. This woman who had whispered to Derek that he could do better. This woman who thought money made her superior. She talked about me like I was furniture, Maggie thought. A lamp that had dimmed, something to be replaced, not repaired. And for 10 years I let them. "Actually," Maggie said, I've changed my mind about having that drink. She signaled a waiter, ordered a glass of the most expensive champagne on the menu, charged it to Carolyn's account. Your son has been stealing from me, she said calmly, hiding money in offshore accounts. The prenup he's so proud of has an infidelity clause. It's void. Carolyn's face went pale beneath her makeup. I have documentation of everything. Bank records, hotel receipts, emails. Your son made the mistake of thinking I would never look. But I looked, Carolyn, and I found it all. She stood, picked up her champagne, took a single sip. So, no, I won't be signing his papers. I won't be taking $50,000. And I certainly won't be disappearing. She set the glass down with a decisive clink. You should prepare your son, because when my lawyer is finished with him, he won't have a country club to hide in anymore. She walked out. Head high, heart pounding, the money Derek had hidden was nothing compared to what she was about to discover she was worth. Maggie drove without destination. The city lights blurred past her window. Red, yellow, white, the colors of other people's lives, other people's Tuesday nights, other people's ordinary problems. Her hands shook on the steering wheel. Adrenaline crashing now. The confrontation with Carolyn had taken everything she had. Every ounce of courage, every fragment of dignity, and now she had nowhere to go. The house was Derek's. The country club was Carolyn's. The city itself seemed to belong to the Whitmore family. Their name was everywhere, on buildings and charity plaques and newspaper headlines. 10 years of marriage had taught Maggie that she was merely a footnote in their story. She turned onto the highway, heading north toward the place she had been avoiding for 3 years. The place that held too many memories, too much pain. Her mother's cottage. Ruth Callahan had died on a Thursday morning in April. Cancer, the kind that moves fast and forgives nothing. Maggie had been there at the end, holding her mother's hand, watching the light fade from her eyes. Derek had not come to the funeral. He said he had a meeting. She remembered his exact words. You understand, don't you, Maggie? It's important. She had understood. She had always understood. She had spent a decade understanding while her own needs went unmet. Her own grief went unacknowledged. Her own self slowly disappeared. The cottage appeared through the darkness. Small, white, a garden out front that had gone wild with neglect. Maggie pulled into the driveway and turned off the engine. She sat there for 23 minutes. The clock on the dashboard kept count. The heater hummed. The engine ticked as it cooled. She was not ready to go inside. Not ready to face the empty room. Not ready to smell her mother's perfume and know that Ruth would never walk through that door again. But she had nowhere else to go. Maggie got out of the car. The night air was cold. October in Massachusetts. The leaves were falling, carpeting the lawn in red and gold. Ruth had loved autumn, said it was the world putting on its best dress before going to sleep. The front door stuck. It always stuck. Maggie had to shoulder it open. The smell hit her immediately. Lavender and old books. Her mother's signature. The scent of home. The cottage was exactly as Ruth had left it. Maggie had paid someone to keep the utilities running, to check on things occasionally, but she had not been inside since the funeral. She walked through the rooms like a ghost, the kitchen where Ruth had taught her to bake, the living room where they had watched old movies together, the bedroom where her mother had taken her final breath. Everything was covered in a thin layer of dust. The tea kettle still sat on the stove. Ruth's reading glasses rested on the end table, as if she had just stepped out, as if she might return at any moment. Maggie sat on the old sofa. The springs creaked beneath her. She was so tired, tired of being strong, tired of holding herself together, tired of pretending that any of this was okay. She thought about her marriage, the early years when Derek had been charming and attentive, the way he used to bring her flowers on Tuesdays, just because, the way he used to hold her hand at dinner parties, proud to have her on his arm. When had it changed? She could not pinpoint the exact moment. It had happened slowly, gradually, like a frog in boiling water. By the time she realized she was drowning, she had forgotten how to swim. The miscarriage had been part of it, their first year of trying for a baby, the excitement and then the devastating loss. Derek had been uncomfortable with her grief, said she needed to move on, said it wasn't healthy to dwell. She had stopped dwelling, stopped talking about it, stopped letting herself feel, and somewhere along the way, she had stopped letting herself be herself. I wasn't stupid, she thought. I was hopeful. There's a difference. There has to be. But was there? Was there really a difference between hope and denial, between faith and foolishness, between loving someone and losing yourself in them? Maggie pulled her knees to her chest, wrapped her arms around herself. The cottage was cold. She should turn on the heat. She should do a lot of things. Instead, she just sat there, watching the dust motes float in the lamplight, listening to the silence of a house that had been empty too long. Her phone buzzed. "Gwen, where are you? Are you okay?" Maggie typed back slowly. "At my mom's cottage. I'm fine. Want me to come?" Maggie considered it, then typed back, "No. I need to be alone for a while. Okay, but call me if you need anything. Anytime." Maggie set down her phone. She looked around the cottage, at her mother's things, at the life Ruth had built, here after the divorce, after her husband had left. She had never told Maggie much about that time, just that her father had been a good man who made a difficult choice, that sometimes love means letting go, that she should not blame him. Maggie had blamed him anyway. For 25 years she had blamed him for leaving, for choosing something else over his family, over her. She stood, suddenly restless. She needed to do something. Anything. She needed to stop thinking about all the men who had abandoned her. She started cleaning, an old habit. When overwhelmed, she cleaned. When anxious, she organized. When her world fell apart, she scrubbed counters until her hands were raw. The kitchen came first, then the bathroom, then her mother's bedroom. She changed the sheets, dusted the furniture, opened the windows to let in the cold night air. In the closet, she found boxes. Ruth's things, clothes to donate, books to give away, a lifetime reduced to cardboard and packing tape. At the bottom of the closet was a small safe, black, heavy, the kind that needed a key. Maggie had never seen it before. She searched the cottage, looking for a key that matched. In drawers and boxes, under furniture, nothing. Then she remembered. Ruth's Bible, the one she had kept on her nightstand, the one she had clutched in her final days. Maggie found it, where it had always been, worn leather cover, pages soft. With use, she opened it carefully, and there, taped inside the front cover, a small brass key. A note was attached, Ruth's handwriting, familiar and achingly missed. For Maggie. "When you're ready." Maggie's hands trembled as she took the key to the safe. She knelt on the closet floor. The carpet was thin beneath her knees. The safe was cold beneath her fingers. The key turned. The lock clicked. The door swung open. Inside, she found 3 things: a letter in a sealed envelope, a photograph of a man she did not recognize, and a stack of documents she could not understand. Maggie took the letter first. Her name was written on the front. Ruth's handwriting again. She opened it slowly, carefully, as if the paper itself was precious. "My darling girl," the letter began. "If you're reading this, I'm gone, and you need to know the truth." Maggie's heart stopped, started again. Her mother's voice seemed to speak from beyond the grave. "Your father didn't abandon you. I sent him away. The words blurred. Maggie blinked. Read them again. He was in danger. The kind of danger that follows money. The kind of danger I wouldn't let touch you. Danger. Money. What was Ruth talking about? His name isn't James Callahan. It never was. His name is Edward Callahan, and by now he's probably the richest man you've never heard of. Maggie read the name 3 times. Edward Callahan. It meant nothing to her. And everything. I'm sorry, my darling. I thought I was protecting you. Maybe I was wrong. Find him. Let him explain. He never stopped watching over you. He never stopped loving you. The letter continued. Details about how to find him. About the documents in the safe. About a life Maggie had never known existed. And neither did I. The letter ended there. Ruth's final words to her daughter. The truth she had kept for 25 years. Maggie sat on the closet floor, the letter in her lap, the photograph in her hands, a man with silver hair and kind eyes, eyes that looked familiar, eyes that looked like hers. She read the letter again, 4 times, 5. The words never changed. Her entire history did. Everything she thought she knew about her life was a lie. Morning came gray and cold. Maggie had not slept. She had spent the night reading and rereading her mother's letter, studying the photograph, trying to understand. Edward Callahan. The name echoed in her head. A stranger who was supposedly her father. A man her mother had sent away? A man who had been watching over her? The documents in the safe were financial records, stock certificates, legal papers she could not decipher. They meant nothing to her untrained eye, but they clearly meant something. She needed help. She needed Gwen. Her best friend arrived at 9 with coffee and determination. She spread the documents across Ruth's kitchen table. Her paralegal brain working overtime. Maggie, she said after 20 minutes. Do you know what these are? No. Gwen held up a stock certificate. This is ownership in a holding company called Callahan Capital. According to these records, your mother held shares worth approximately $50 million. Maggie dropped her coffee cup. It shattered on the floor. She did not move to clean it up. $50 million. That's what it was worth 10 years ago. Gwen's voice was strained. If the company has grown since then, and based on these dividend statements, it has grown significantly. You could be looking at hundreds of millions. The room tilted. Maggie grabbed the edge of the table. That's not possible. My mother was a librarian. She lived in a cottage. She drove a 15-year-old car. Gwen handed her another document. A trust? In your name. She never touched the money, Maggie. She kept it all for you. Why? Maggie's voice cracked. Why wouldn't she tell me? Gwen picked up Ruth's letter. Read it again slowly. She says your father was in danger, the kind that follows money. Maybe she was afraid the danger would find you too. Maggie thought about her childhood, the small apartment, the second-hand clothes, the scholarships and student loans that had gotten her through college. All that time her mother had been sitting on a fortune. All that time she could have helped, could have made things easier, could have told Maggie the truth. She was protecting me, Maggie said. But from what? Gwen pointed to the photograph. Maybe from him. Maggie looked at the man in the picture again. Silver hair, kind eyes. He was standing in front of a building, a modern glass structure with a sign she could not quite read. Gwen pulled out her phone, typed something, stared at the screen for a long moment. Maggie, she said slowly, I think I know who your father is. She turned the phone around. On the screen was a news article, a photograph of the same man, older now but unmistakable. The headline read, Edward Callahan named world's first trillionaire as Callahan. Capital reaches historic valuation. Maggie took the phone, read the article 3 times. Each time the words became more impossible. Her father was not just rich. He was the richest man on the planet. A tech security mogul, a philanthropist, a man whose name was known in every country on earth, and he had been watching over her whole life, without her knowing. The photograph, Gwen said. Look at the building behind him. Maggie zoomed in. The sign came into focus. The Callahan Foundation. I know that building, she whispered. I've walked past it 100 times. It's 3 blocks from my office. Gwen nodded. According to this article, the Callahan Foundation is the largest charitable organization in the state, focused on education and medical research and clean water initiatives. Edward Callahan founded it 20 years ago. 20 years ago, Maggie thought. 5 years after he left, he built a charity while she grew up thinking he had abandoned her, while she scraped together student loans and worked 2 jobs, while she married a man who treated her like she was worthless. He had been right there, watching, waiting. Maggie felt something new rising in her chest. Not grief, not confusion, something hotter. Anger. He let me struggle, she said. He let me believe he didn't care. He watched me marry Derek, watched me suffer for 10 years, and he never said anything. Maybe he couldn't, Gwen said gently. Your mother's letter says there was danger. Danger, Maggie's voice was bitter. What kind of danger is worth abandoning your child? What kind of father chooses money over his own daughter? Gwen had no answer. Maggie stood, began pacing the small kitchen, her mother's kitchen, full of secrets and lies. I need to find him, she said. I need to hear it from him. Why he left, why he stayed away, why he let me believe I was alone in the world. Gwen nodded. How do you want to do this? Maggie thought about it. She could call his office. She could write a letter. She could show up at his foundation with proof of who she was. But she was not ready for that. Not yet. She needed to understand who this man was first. She needed to see him without being seen. The foundation, she said. I'll start there, as a volunteer. Someone anonymous, someone who can watch and learn. And then I'll decide if I want him to know me at all. The Callahan Foundation was everything Maggie expected and nothing she was prepared for. Glass and steel and light, modern architecture that somehow felt warm. The lobby alone was bigger than her mother's entire cottage. She had applied for a volunteer position online, checking boxes and uploading a resume that suddenly felt inadequate. What did a former marketing coordinator with a decade gap in her work history have to offer a billion-dollar charity? But they called her back within days, eager for help, grateful for her interest. The woman on the phone said they could always use people who cared. Maggie showed up on a Thursday morning, October sunlight streaming through the glass walls. She wore simple clothes, no jewelry, nothing that would draw attention. The volunteer coordinator was a young woman named Patricia. Bright eyes and genuine enthusiasm, she gave Maggie a tour of the building, showed her the programs they ran, the communities they served, the lives they changed, and on every wall, in every hallway, photographs of Edward Callahan. Maggie stopped in front of a large portrait near the main conference room. Her father stared back at her, 61 years old according to the plaque beneath the frame, silver hair neatly combed, suit perfectly tailored, kind eyes that looked so much like hers. She stood there for 7 minutes. Patricia had moved on, talking to someone else, leaving Maggie alone with the man who had abandoned her. You look just like him. Maggie spun around. A man stood behind her, mid-40s, warm face, expensive suit that somehow seemed casual on him. He was looking at her with an expression she could not read. Excuse me, Edward Callahan. The man nodded toward the portrait. The eyes especially. You have his eyes. Maggie's heart stopped. Started again at twice the speed. I don't know what you mean. The man smiled gently. My name is Theodore Vance, but everyone calls me Teddy. I'm Edward's right hand, his lawyer, his friend. He paused. studying her face with those knowing eyes. And you're Maggie. He's been waiting for you to show up for 25 years. The world tilted. Maggie grabbed the wall for support. The portrait of her father seemed to watch her, judging, waiting. How do you know who I am? Because I've seen your photograph every day for a quarter century. Teddy's voice was kind. On Edward's desk, in his wallet, on the mantle, in his private office. You're the only person he's ever truly loved. Maggie's eyes burned, tears threatening to fall, 25 years of anger and hurt and confusion rising to the surface. Then why? Her voice cracked. Why did he leave me? Teddy glanced around. The lobby was busy, people moving, phones ringing, not the place for this conversation. Come with me, he said. There's someone who would very much like to explain. Teddy led Maggie through the foundation headquarters, past offices and conference rooms, past employees who nodded respectfully, past a door marked private that opened with a key card only he possessed. The inner office was different from the rest of the building. Warmer, more personal. Photographs everywhere, not of charity events or business meetings. Of a little girl. Maggie recognized herself in every frame. Her first day of school, her high school graduation, her wedding day, Derek slipping the ring on her finger while she smiled up at him, unknowing, trusting, doomed. Edward had been watching. Every moment, every milestone. He had documented her entire life from a distance. The anger flared again, hot and righteous. This is creepy, she said. This is surveillance, not love. Teddy did not argue, just gestured toward a door at the far end of the room. Tell him that yourself. The door opened, and there he was, Edward Callahan, the richest man in the world, her father. He was shorter than she expected. The photographs made him seem imposing. In person, he seemed almost fragile. 61 years old and carrying every one of them in the lines around his eyes. Maggie. His voice broke on her name. You came? I didn't come for you. The words were sharp, protective. I came for answers. Edward nodded slowly. You deserve them, all of them. He gestured to a pair of the chairs by the window. The city spread out below them, a kingdom of glass and steel, a kingdom he had built while she scraped by on nothing. Maggie sat, kept her back straight, her walls up. Start from the beginning, she said. And don't leave anything out. So he did. He told her about meeting Ruth in college, about falling in love, about building a small tech security company that grew faster than either of them expected. He told her about the partners who betrayed him, about the threats that followed, about the men who broke into their apartment when Maggie was just a baby, looking for leverage, looking for weakness. He told her about the choice he and Ruth had made together, to send him away, to change their names, to let Maggie grow up, believing her father was a deadbeat who didn't care. It was the only way to keep you safe. His voice was rough with old grief. The people who wanted to hurt me would have used you. Kidnapping, extortion, worse. Ruth and I decided that a fatherless childhood was better than no childhood at all. Maggie listened, her anger fighting with something else, something that felt dangerously like understanding. You could have told me when I was older. I was afraid, Edward admitted. Afraid you would hate me. Afraid the danger wasn't truly gone. Afraid that reaching out would put you at risk all over again. So, you just watched. 25 years of watching. While I struggled, while I married a man who treats me like nothing. Edward's jaw tightened. I know about Derek. Of course you do. Bitterness crept into her voice. You know everything, apparently. I know he cheated on you. I know he's been stealing from you. I know his family has made you feel worthless for a decade. He leaned forward, his eyes intense. I also know that Whitmore and Associates has been struggling. They made bad investments, borrowed from the wrong people. They've been hemorrhaging money for 2 years, Maggie frowned. What does that have to do with anything? Derek's family company is about to go under. They've been looking for a buyer, someone to bail them out before they lose everything, and Edward's expression shifted, something almost like satisfaction in his eyes. I bought it. Yesterday. The entire company. Their whole legacy. Their precious family name. Maggie stared at him, not understanding. Why would you do that? Because he hurt you. Edward's voice was steel wrapped in velvet. Because his mother made you feel small. Because his father looked down on my daughter like she was nothing. Because for 10 years they took everything you gave and offered nothing in return. He reached across the space between them, touched her hand gently. I bought their company, Maggie, and I bought it for you. That night, Maggie sat alone in her mother's cottage, processing, trying to make sense of everything she had learned. Her father was a trillionaire. He had been watching her entire life. He had bought her husband's company. It sounded like a fairy tale, the kind of story she never would have believed if she hadn't lived it. Her phone rang. Gwen, Derek's been calling me, her friend said without preamble, demanding to know where you are. Apparently, his parents got wind of some acquisition, and they're freaking out. Do they know who bought them? Not yet. The holding company is anonymous. But they will soon. Maggie thought about the confrontation that was coming. Derek's face when he realized who owned his family's legacy. Carolyn's horror when she understood who she had dismissed as common. There was satisfaction in the thought, but also exhaustion. I don't want revenge, she said. I just want to be free of them. Sometimes freedom requires a fight. Gwen's voice was gentle. You've been avoiding conflict your whole marriage, shrinking yourself to fit Derek's expectations. Maybe it's time to take up space. Maggie looked around the cottage, her mother's cottage. Ruth had kept secrets here for 25 years, protecting her daughter in the only way she knew how. Maybe it was time for a different kind of protection, the kind that came from standing tall, from refusing to be diminished, from letting the world see who she really was. Okay, she said. What's the plan? Rachel Morrison thinks you should file for divorce before Derek does. Take control of the narrative. She also thinks you should countersue for fraud regarding the hidden assets. And the company. That's your call. Your father put it in your name. You can do whatever you want with it. Maggie thought about it. The power she suddenly held, the ability to destroy the family that had tormented her. But destruction wasn't what she wanted. Not really. I want justice, she said slowly. But I don't want to become like them. Then we'll find another way? Gwen promised. We always do. The divorce filing happened 3 days later. Rachel Morrison submitted the paperwork with surgical precision. Fraud, hidden assets, infidelity. Every crime Derek had committed laid bare in legal language. His lawyer called within hours, sputtering about unfounded accusations, about malicious prosecution, about the ironclad prenup that would protect his client. Rachel listened politely, then informed him that the prenup was void due to the infidelity clause, that the hidden accounts had been documented, that Maggie was prepared to go public with everything. The line went silent for a long moment. Then his lawyer asked what Mrs. Callahan wanted. Everything she deserves, Rachel said calmly, which is considerably more than your client ever gave her. The weeks that followed were a strange limbo. Lawyers negotiating, documents exchanging hands, the machinery of divorce grinding slowly forward. Maggie stayed at her mother's cottage, rebuilding a life she hadn't known she'd lost, rediscovering who she was without Derek's constant criticism shaping her every choice. She cooked meals Ruth had taught her, read books Derek had called a waste of time, took long walks through the autumn woods behind the cottage. Let herself be still, and slowly, carefully, She began to know her father. They met for coffee first. A neutral location. Public. Safe. Edward let her set the pace. Answered her questions without defensiveness. Accepted her anger without argument. He told her about the early years. The threats that kept him away. The bodyguards he hired to watch over her from a distance. The reports he received every month. Her grades, her friends, her heartbreaks. He knew about her first boyfriend, the one who had cheated on her in college. He knew about her miscarriage, the one Derek had dismissed as no big deal. He knew about every promotion she had given up, every dream she had deferred, every piece of herself she had sacrificed on the altar of her marriage. I wanted to intervene, he admitted, so many times, especially after Ruth died. But you were an adult. It was your life to live, your mistakes to make. But you finally did intervene, Maggie said. The company. Edward nodded slowly. When I heard what Derek was planning, the offshore accounts, the affair, the way he was going to leave you with nothing, I couldn't stand by anymore. He looked at her with those eyes that matched her own. I failed you for 25 years, Maggie. I let you grow up alone, let you believe you were abandoned, let you marry a man who didn't deserve you. This was the only way I knew to start making it right. Maggie felt the old anger stirring, the familiar resentment, but something else too, something that felt like the beginning of forgiveness. You can't make up for lost time by buying things, she said. I know, and I don't want your money. I didn't grow up with it. I don't need it now. Edward smiled sadly. The money was never the point. You're my daughter. Everything I have exists because I was trying to build something worthy of you. They sat in silence for a long moment. Two strangers who shared blood. Two people learning how to be family after a lifetime apart. I don't know if I can forgive you, Maggie said finally. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I don't expect forgiveness, Edward replied. I just hope for the chance to know you, to be part of your life, whatever that looks like. Maggie thought about it, about the years of loneliness, about the father she had mourned, about the man sitting across from her now. We can try, she said, slowly, one day at a time. Edward's eyes glistened. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Maggie stood, gathered her things. We have a long way to go. But as she walked out of the coffee shop, she felt something shift inside her. Not forgiveness, not yet, but something that might grow into it someday. Hope. The confrontation with Derek came 2 weeks later. He had finally discovered who bought his company. His lawyer had done some digging, connected the dots. Callahan Capital, Edward Callahan, Maggie's father. Derek's fury was legendary. He called her 17 times in 1 hour, left voicemails ranging from pleading to threatening, showed up at the cottage at midnight, pounding on the door. Maggie did not answer. She sat in her mother's chair, listening to him rage outside, feeling nothing. The police came eventually. Gwen had called them. Derek was escorted away, warned about harassment, humiliated in front of the neighbors. Small justice. But satisfying, nonetheless. The board meeting was scheduled for a Tuesday. Whitmore and Associates headquarters. The same building where Derek had built his career. The same conference room where his father had held court for 40 years. They didn't know yet. Edward had kept the buyer anonymous until the last possible moment. The Whitmore family had been told only that new ownership would be introduced. That changes were coming. That attendance was mandatory. Maggie spent the night before at her father's house. A mansion, really. But Edward used only a few rooms. Lived simply, despite his wealth. The photographs of Maggie were everywhere. Her whole life documented in silver frames. Are you nervous? He asked over dinner. Simple pasta, his own recipe. No. Maggie surprised herself with the truth. I'm ready. Ready for what? She thought about Dereky, about Carolyn, about all the years of feeling small, ready to be seen, she said. Really seen for who I actually am, Edward nodded. That's all any of us want. They talked late into the night, about Ruth, about the choices that had shaped all their lives, about the future they might build together. When Maggie finally went to bed, she slept better than she had in years. The morning of the board meeting dawned clear and cold. November now. The trees were bare. Winter coming. Gwen helped Maggie dress. Not a revenge dress. Nothing obvious. An elegant suit in deep blue. Professional, confident. The kind of outfit she had never worn during her marriage because Derek preferred her in pastels. You look like a CEO, Gwen said, satisfied. I feel like a stranger. That's because you're meeting the real Maggie for the first time, the one Derek tried to bury. Maggie looked in the mirror. At this woman she barely recognized. Strong, certain, ready. Let's go. The Whitmore and Associates building was imposing, all glass and granite. The Whitmore name carved above the entrance in letters 2 feet tall. Maggie had been here many times, holiday parties, summer picnics, events where she was introduced as Derek's wife and promptly ignored. Today was different. She walked through the lobby with her father and Teddy on either side. Security nodded them through. The elevator rose smoothly to the top floor. The conference room was full when they arrived. The entire Whitmore family. Preston at the head of the table, Carolyn beside him, Derek pacing by the window, other faces too, board members, lawyers, people Maggie vaguely recognized from a decade of being on the periphery of Derek's life. They all looked up when the door opened, expecting the mysterious new owner, the anonymous buyer who had saved their company from ruin. Teddy Vance entered first, then Edward Callahan, the name registered immediately, gasps around the table, Preston Whitmore going pale, and then Maggie. She walked to the head of the table, her table now. She stood where Preston had ruled for 40 years. The silence was absolute. Derek's face went white, then red, then white again. His mouth opened, closed. No sound came out. Carolyn's martini glass slipped from her fingers, shattered on the conference table. Nobody moved to clean it up. "Hello, Derek," Maggie said calmly. "You look surprised." The silence stretched. 5 seconds? 10.